are again live at Ultimate Studios Inc. from North Hollywood. Today, modes, minor modes. Yeah, some cool stuff. Minor modes. And basically, I'm going to just talk about the basics of it. And what are modes? Modes is the major scale played in different parts or different starting notes. So if you have the case of G, you got starting on the G note, then you start on the A note, and then a B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. So each one of those has a chord. So today we'll talk about two of the most used minor modes. One is natural minor, and the other one is Dorian. Dorian is probably the less dark sounding one, and it's used all over the place. Certain musicians made a career out of it. Right, that's the sound of Dorian. And minor is your basic sad tonality. Right? So I'll just be comparing both. And funny thing is that there's only one note different between them. And when you say, okay, so let's say I have an E minor chord, kind of like what I was playing before. And in theory, I can play 3 minor modes over it because the information I have on the E minor chord is not enough to narrow down my choices. I got an E note, I got a G note, and I got a B note. And well, to say, so, okay, is that natural minor, is that Dorian, or is that Phrygian? It's like, well, I don't have enough information, right? I need to know what happens to the 2nd degree, to the 6th degree, and to the 7th degree, and obviously to the 6th degree. Now, when you grab natural minor, which is the 6th mode in the major scale, so if we are in G major, we get to E. So in E minor, you got 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, and 1. Everybody knows this scale, right? It's a typical minor scale. And you say, okay, so what can I do to make it sound like E minor without saying, hey, that sounds, you can play Dorian over that, or you can play Phrygian over that. So, well, you have to narrow down the mode choices. So the easiest thing to do is basically go 1 minor, case of E, 1 minor, and then go to the 4 chord minor. And that's basically what I was using on the chord progression before. So, but why? Why the 4 chord? Why not something else? What if I want to grab, hey, I want to go to a D chord? Yeah, a D chord is cool, but the D chord doesn't give you the information you need to narrow it down to the minor scale. So what is the money note in the minor scale? Is obviously the flat 3, but you're playing that already with the E minor chord. So what else do I need? Well, the 5th is already in the chord, and flat 7, it's like, yeah, I mean, that would happen if I play a D chord, but is that really natural minor? It's like, no. The money note is that flat 6, right? That C note. So what chord can I play with a C note in it? Well, I can play the actual C chord, or I can play a chord that has a C note in it. In this case, A minor. Right? So that's pretty cool. Simple. 1, 4 is the most common chord progression in the world. 1, 4, 4 minor. This is what they basically use in the minor blues. Right? Okay. So you can do it 2 ways. You can do it one time, actually do the move to the 4 chord. Or you can do more of a drone type of playing, rhythmically, where you just hit an A minor chord, but you don't change the low bass. Right? So here I'm just going to an A minor, but I'm not going. So the bass player would be kind of bummed out because it's, oh, what, I gotta stay on E? But it's usually the best way to get the tonality. Why? Because I need that flat 6 to be in the chord progression. Right? So it doesn't get sadder than that, right? There's other ways where people use power chords. And one way to do it is you use an inversion. You do your E power chord, and then you play the C, but invert it. In this case, I got the C, the root on the top, and then I'll play the E in the bottom part of the chord. But the important thing is that the pedal is on the low E, so you don't deviate harmonically. It's used all over the place, you know, especially in the shreddy type of playing, you know, instrumental guitar music, all that stuff. And then we'll see later on how you can move that into more multiple modes, and you get that famous so, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, so E minor and then A minor with E in the bass. So basically, E minor scale. So I'll play it one time through, see what it sounds like. So I want to emphasize that 4 chord with that A minor. Emphasize the E minor, and then A minor. But it's all in the key of E minor. Now the one thing you don't want to do is just play that C note, which is the flat 6, constantly, right? It's a very, very clashy note on the E minor chord. So if you just land on that note constantly, it's just a little annoying after a while. So let me show you what I mean. That's fine, right? The flat 6 is there. It's part of the chord. But now, right? It's like, no, don't do it so many times. E minor. Now I can go after that C note, flat 6. Resolve back. Right? That's why we have 2 chords, because if you just play the E minor scale up and down, noodling, you know, it's fun, right? But after a while, you go like, okay, what's going on, right? Is there any direction you're going to? It's like, no, just play the tonality of the triads in the chord progression. So E minor and then A minor. Okay? And let me see here what we got. Okay. All right. Now, what about Dorian? Well, Dorian is probably the most jammy, you know, like really, hey, let's just jam in Dorian. It's just easy. It's almost uplifting. It still has the minor third in it. So if we do it in E minor, I should play E minor. So if you do it in E minor, now the Dorian mode per se is the second mode in the major scales. So if I want to do E Dorian, that means E would be the second mode. So I'll go one whole step back, then you got D. So D major. So D major scale. So you got D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and D. Now let's start out from E. You got E, F sharp, G minor third, A fourth, B the fifth, and now here comes the money note, the C sharp. So the C sharp is the money note in E Dorian. And when you compare it to the natural minor, and there's a couple of famous riffs that use that. I'm not going to play every one, but right? So it's playing with that 6th degree in the scale. So natural minor has a flat 6 degree, and the minor Dorian mode has a natural 6th degree. So what is a typical chord progression where you have that C sharp in it? That's when you make the 4 chord, instead of minor, you make it major. And the best sound for making it major is to make it actually dominant. So you got A7. And that's probably the most common Dorian progression in the world. A lot of songs have been written just with those 2 chords. So E minor, you can make it E minor 7 if you want. And then you go to A dominant 7. So there you go. You probably heard that a couple of thousand times, right? So let me bring up my cool progression here. And here's Dorian. So I'll go from E minor to an A7. So dominant. So remember, flat 3, natural 6, right? So that C sharp is in there. So let's see what that sounds like. Right? That 4 chord is very uplifting. It just gives you like, yeah, it's like, just feel good. It's you jamming in minor, but that 4 chord really lifts the whole spirit. And basically, when you go to an A7 chord, you can use the arpeggio as well. It's not only the Dorian sound. You can use the full arpeggio, in this case, A dominant 7. Really bring out that major triad of the 4 chord. So we'll play it one more time and let's see what it sounds like with some arpeggios. E minor arpeggio. A major. Okay? It's really lots of fun because instead of just playing the E Dorian scale up and down, which again, it's fine if you do it, but after a while it just becomes very stale. It's boring. It's okay. There's no motif development. So let me show you what it means when you're just noodling in E Dorian and pretty much you're not going anywhere with it. Alright, just playing the scale up and down, noodling. I mean, I'm playing the scale great, but there's no motif development. So if you slow down and take a breather and pause, then you can develop something. Bring out the triads. You can even make an exercise, let's say with arpeggios, and you do the switch. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just that as an exercise. Alright, so just make it arpeggio city. Just the arpeggio up and down, but it will help you do the harmonic changes. So you're going from an E minor arpeggio to an A major arpeggio instead of just playing a scale up and down. You're just going somewhere harmonically, and it makes you think a little more. You visualize your neck. You have targets. That's the most important thing when you improvise. You gotta have some targets. Otherwise, it just becomes just almost an ego trip on the guitar player. It's like, oh, let me show you 4,000 ways of just playing up and down. And if you don't have any targets, it just becomes just boring and almost rubbish, right? It's just so again, remember. Let me go back to the minor scale. And remember, it's the flat 6, that's the money note. So minor third, and then the flat 6 are the notes you want to emphasize. Oh, wait a minute. Haha, see, if you take the wrong progression, it doesn't work. You got to take the right progression. Yeah, this is the one. I was playing in A minor. This is the one. Now comes the flat 6. Back to the 1. Flat 6. Back to 1. Alright. Let's switch over to Dorian. Now I'm going to do the major 6. Alright. So remember, E minor going to A7. Now it's a C sharp in there. So it's really being aware of what happens harmonically, right? And I would say, think about, okay, how am I going to approach playing the scale? Am I going to go up and down? And am I going to go, just lots of scales? Or am I going to go more pentatonic? Can I go little arpeggios? Experiment, right? Timing is a big issue. If you don't have timing, it will just sound wobbly, not pretty pro. If you just play the scale up and down, it will sound like you don't really know what's going on harmonically. So keep in mind that on any chord, you can always play the pentatonic of that chord. So if it's E minor, you can always play E minor pentatonic. If it's A minor, always A minor pentatonic. So you can mix everything together. So arpeggios, minor pentatonics, intervals, right? So that's it for today. Next week will be cool because we'll do one chord progression with the 3 modes in it. So I'll add Phrygian in it, right? Phrygian will be in it. And we'll do one chord progression where you go natural minor, Dorian, and Phrygian. So all in just one chord progression. It's pretty scientific, if you want to call it, because you have to think a lot. Key changes and targeting. All right? So let's go out with good old Dorian, and see you next week.